Well, we have a very exciting event coming up in the Tibbetts family. Our first grandchild is due any day now. To commemorate that, or at least help commemorate that, I'm going to make a couple of baby rattles. Something I've never done before, but I think I've come up with a design that'll be fun to do. It's going to require the use of some laminated material. Now, this is leftover material from some older checkered hollow form projects. If you need to review, go back to Volume 1. There's a lesson on checkered hollow forms, and it talks about how to create this laminated material. I'm fortunate I have some leftover, but in all likelihood, if you want to make this kind of project, you're going to have to create some of this material first. From this material, I'm going to cut out rectangular pieces and stack them into rectangular blocks, as opposed to cutting out circles that could be stacked into a vessel form. I'll take those rectangular blocks, turn two small bowls, if you will, at the ends, which will be the inside of the rattle, two halves, and then put the two halves together and then turn the outside of the rattle. Follow along. I think this is going to be a fun project, not too difficult, but something definitely different.
Now the key to this project is the laminated material. The initial laminations have to be very accurate. Go back to that Volume 1 lesson if you need to review that. And then the stacking has to be very accurate to create this rectangular construction. The turning of the little openings and the final turning of the rattle on the lathe is probably the easiest part of the project. To get started, I'm ripping my material into strips about 2 inches wide, a little under. Notice I've already done one glue step. I've laminated 2 layers together to start that checkerboard design. And here I'm cross-cutting those strips into about 6-inch long lengths. These I'll start stacking into my rectangular constructions. The glue stacking is done with Type Bond Original, probably my favorite glue. I'm making sure I spread glue on both surfaces, covering 100% of the surfaces. A little rubbing helps squeeze the excess glue out of the seams. And now I'm using some very strong spring clamps to complete the clamping job. But the real key is to align those center seams dead on. They have to be as perfect as possible. Use some magnification, but get those seams dead on to one another.
As I was gluing these laminations together, it occurred to me that in addition to making 1 or 2 small rattles for the baby, I could make a larger version, kind of a keepsake, something that could go on a shelf. So I've grabbed some other material here. You can see the difference in scale, quite a bit larger. And with this material, I'm going to make a larger rattle, something I can burn, the baby's name, a date, the baby's birth weight, and so forth, a keepsake. So in addition to the small stuff, I'll make one big one as well.
On my small rattle, I've got 2 rectangular constructions now that, when held together, form an approximate square. I want to determine what my biggest outside diameter can be. In this case, it's 1.2 inches. If I use a wall thickness of about 1/8 of an inch, well, 2 walls is 1/4 inch, subtracting that 1/4 inch from the 1.2 will give me 0.95 inches. That's my maximum inside diameter for the inside of the rattle. To help me turn those little insides, I'm going to use a little template here. I've turned this cylinder 0.95 inches, and I'll use that as I turn the insides. My lamination is just under 6 inches long. If I put my openings 3 inches apart, center to center, subtract the 3 inches, 2.8, divide that in half, that means I need to come in from each end approximately 1.4 inches. Doesn't have to be exact, but I need to leave enough material for mounting on the lathe. To mount these, I'm using a smooth surface of melamine and double-sided tape. My tailstock center will perfectly position this for me. The double-sided tape is plenty strong enough to hold this for these little teeny turnings. Gently go in there with a bowl gouge and a tool called an eliminator and sneak up on this fit that I need. No need to get real aggressive. It's very little turning. My goal, obviously, is to get these little openings dimensioned so this template will fit in there perfectly. It's a little turning and checking back and forth. As you can see here, I've turned 4 little half bowls. They're positioned opposite one another. I'm carefully spreading glue. I don't want to squeeze out going inside there. And I threw in about a half a dozen black beans in each pocket. That will create the rattle noise. I'm also using my magnification glasses as I carefully align these seams as I apply these clamps. You just can't be too careful with the alignment of those seams. Now for the bigger rattle, it was the same procedure, just larger openings and a few more beans in the pocket. But again, careful alignment of those seams. Now to get these ready for turning on the lathe, I want to make sure I don't lose track of where my center lines are, the center points of those indentations that were turned in the inside. Got to keep track of where those are. Here I'm just putting indentations in the 2 ends so I can mount this between centers on my lathe. And just to make that a little easier, I knocked off the corners on these larger ones. Now, the first step here on the turning, I want to make sure this is as true as possible, as centered as possible between my points on this lathe. So by just knocking the corners off here, I can compare the shapes and make sure that it is centered. This is about as good as I can probably get it. Use whatever tool you like, whether it's a skew or a spindle gouge. You could probably even get away with a bowl gouge on this, although this really is spindle turning. Don't lose sight of where those center lines are as you create this, roundish shape. You want the biggest diameter to line up with the interior opening. I've sanded up to 600, and there's the rattle noise that you can hear. Here's the little guy. I'm sanding that. For finish, I really debated on what's the safest finish for a baby rattle, and decided just paraffin wax. By spinning at a high rate of speed, just some paraffin wax, it applied a nice finish. I can take this off now with just a little power sanding, cleans up the ends. I'll use this cup shape with some more wax paper. I'll spin that just to apply wax on the ends. Time for a test drive with 4-month-old Abbott.